We are on the cusp of a major social change. Do you feel it? Even if you don't, make no mistake, change is coming, and it is going to be unforgettable. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Hart, and here on Prime Spark, where we work with and on behalf of women over 55, I want to help you find that spark that will ignite your way forward, reflect your gifts to the world, and illuminate your path through this next stage of life. Through these podcast conversations, I hope to inspire you to see how you can make a significant contribution to some of the gnarly problems that are facing us right now. Join me, and together let's discover our Prime Spark. Hi, and welcome to Prime Spark. I'm Sarah Hart, and I'm so happy you're here with us. Prime Spark is designed for women over 55, or close, with a goal to help us all live our happiest, most fulfilling and productive lives now and in the future. The mission of Prime Spark is to change the way our society sees and treats older women. That's a big mission, which only means we all need to be involved and we need to get going now. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Laura Davis, a woman whose work I greatly admire. Laura Davis is the author of The Burning Light of Two Stars, The Courage to Heal, and 4 other groundbreaking books. In addition to writing books that inspire, the work of Laura's heart is to teach. For more than 20 years, she's helped people find their voices, tell their stories, and hone their craft. Laura has been published in Publishers Weekly, Writer's Digest, Crime Reads, Brevity, the New York Times, and featured in the Los Angeles Review of Books, and has been an engaging guest on QWERTY, Right-Minded, The Only One in the Room, and dozens of other podcasts. She's been a featured speaker for the National Association of Memoir Writers and a popular craft teacher at the San Miguel Writers Conference. You can learn about Laura's books and workshops, read the first 5 chapters of her memoir, and receive a free ebook, Writing Through Courage, a 30-day practice, at www.lauradavis.net. Welcome, Laura. I'm so happy you're here with us today.
I'm happy too. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, Sarah.
Oh, me too, Laura. Me too. So just to get started, Laura, do you experience getting older? And if so, what is that experience like for you?
You bet I do. It's actually probably the number one topic on my mind right now. And it's so interesting. I actually, I'm a writer, so I write about things that I'm trying to process or understand. And just the other day, I sat down early in the morning, because now I get up early in the morning, right? Because I'm getting older. And I was writing about aging. And what I said was that I had this expectation that aging would mean, that kind of I'd go along basically the way I've lived my life up until this point, which is as a pretty driven, workaholic, productive, creative, generative person with a certain pace and energy. And that I would just keep doing that until either something physically happened where I, had some kind of, I've had cancer before and my cancer would come back, or I'd have a heart attack, or, I'd fall, or there'd be I get a diagnosis, something physical would happen that would force me to change, or my mind would start to go, because I had a grandmother who was senile and a mother who had dementia. So in my mind, aging was like one of these 2 parts of my life would fall apart, and then I would, change. And what I'm experiencing instead, I have some physical, I'm experiencing my memory is not as good, and physically I have different aches and pains, and I have to be more cautious in certain ways. So I'm experiencing changes on all those levels. But what I'm actually experiencing is a more psychic change. Like I don't want to do things I don't want to do. And I can't drive myself the way I've driven myself before. And I'm I find myself frustrated and angry at all the tasks on my list that I used to take in my stride to do. Now I feel burdened. And I'm a self-employed entrepreneur, and I find that everything I do in my business, in my work, as a writing teacher and a workshop leader and an author, it depends on my personal energy and me showing up. And I just don't want to show up in the same way anymore. I want to be out with my dog who just turned 2 years old, my pandemic puppy. I want to be walking in the woods. I want to be visiting a friend. I want to be playing cards. I need more space around things. And so my experience of aging is that the change is on a more spiritual, psychic level at this moment. And I was not prepared for it.
That is fascinating, Laura. I honestly, I have at this point, between my podcast and a radio show I have talked to probably over 200 women over 50 or 55. And I haven't kept absolute track, but I'll bet you 95% say something like you've just said, that physically, of course, da, 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 da. But other than that, I just want to do what I want to do. I don't care so much what people think. I feel freer in a lot of ways. And so I think it's fascinating that the major changes many of us experience, so far as I can tell, aren't very much talked about because we're all surprised by it.
Right. I mean, I'm 66, and I think my experience of the 60s so far is a lot of saying no to things and a lot of I don't want to do things I don't want to do anymore. And I happen to be in a position of privilege where I can make those kind of choices, or at least I can't retire. I have to keep working, but I'm not, I'm in a position where I can make choices. I can choose to do certain things and not other things. And I just, it's sort of like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. No, I don't want to do that anymore. No, I'm really not enjoying this anymore. And so it's wanting to be more discerning. That's the word that keeps coming up to me, is discernment. What is it? I don't know what I want to be doing in the next 5 or 10 years. I mean, I don't even know if I have 5 or 10 years or more. I mean, I don't, since I've had cancer, I don't anticipate or take for granted that I'm going to just keep living. I know that life can change in a minute. But I don't know what I want it to look like. I just know I want it to be different than the way I've lived the rest of my life. And time is ticking. I feel that sense of not pressure, but preciousness.
Yes.
Life feels precious.
Yes.
I don't want to spend it. I don't want to waste my time doing things because I've always done them that way, because I'm habituated to them.
Oh, that's fascinating. I think that maybe what happens for many of us is exactly what you said, that we start seeing that I've lived longer than I will live. I don't know how much longer I'll live, but I've certainly lived longer than I will live in all probability. And
well, absolutely. Unless I'm going to be 140 years old.
You never know, you never know. And so it's precious. And so I don't want to do stuff I don't want to do. I don't want to take the precious time I have left and do a bunch of stuff that is boring, or I don't like to do it, or I don't see any reason to do it, or let somebody else do it. I don't want to. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. The other thing is that I'm someone who's always had this kind of like fountain of creativity inside of me. I've had a million ideas in my life, and I'm good at not just creating but manifesting. I can make things happen, and that not everybody has that combination of manifesting and following through. But I find that fountain of generativity in me feels very quiet. And I published a memoir a year ago that took me 10 years to write, called The Burning Light of Two Stars. It was the story of the tumultuous relationship I had with my mother at the end of her life. And I'm not sure if what I'm experiencing now in terms of this like dearth of new ideas is just because I'm fallow from having produced something so big that took me so long, or if it's a permanent change. Like this is just in my aging, I just don't have that same generative energy. And I really miss it. But I also know I can't force it.
No, and given the way you've described yourself, I have no idea, of course, but I would guess that
Tell me, Sarah,
I know this
I
is what
need your wise voice.
this is what I would guess, just because it's intuitive and it feels like it. That it is the former, that you sort of emptied yourself
Yeah.
with the memoir, and you can't force a filling back up. It will fill back up, but on its own time.
Yeah. I had a writing coach that helped a guy named Joshua Townsend, who I never would have finished my book without because I just couldn't get the structure right. Even though I've been teaching writing for 25 years, I struggled with my own book. And he said that the creative process is create, release, relax. And, I'm very good at creating and I'm actually good at releasing. I don't have any problem putting something out into the world, whether it's like a workshop, a retreat, a book. I can let things go, but the relaxing is much more challenging. And that's what you're talking about. It's like that fallow field.
Right. And that fallow field has been given all sorts of names depending upon who's writing about it. Can be very scary for some people because is this it?
Yeah.
What's now? What's next? I've never.
Or who am I without that?
Who am I without that? That's right.
Who am I without it? Yeah.
So, Laura, talk about your memoir. Tell us what. I guess one of the questions I would ask is, what question were you trying to solve with that book?
Yeah, I think what I teach my memoir students is that every memoir, or any novel too, any books, that the protagonist, which in this case was me, has some deep question that they're trying to answer. It's not just a report about what happened in your life. And the author, to really be engaged in the process, should feel like they're trying to understand their own history at a deeper level, with insight that they didn't have before, which is why it takes time, distance and time from the events you're writing about to write about them. So in my case, I had a very intense relationship with my very dramatic, intense mother. We were at odds for much of my life. We spent many years deeply estranged, and then we struggled for 20 years to rebuild a relationship with each other, which was always quite volatile. And we lived 3,000 miles away from each other. She was in New Jersey, where I'd grown up, and I had basically fled to California, in part to put 3,000 miles distance between us when I was a young woman, and then I just stayed out here. And I felt like the kind of mediated relationship we were able to establish kind of in my middle adult years, in part was successful because we were 3,000 miles away. When she turned 80, or maybe she was 79, she called me and she announced that she was moving across the country to my town for the rest of her life. And she was already showing some signs of dementia. I mean, the beginning stages, but she didn't ask me. She announced she's coming. And I had to deal with that. And I felt incredibly ambivalent. I didn't say no because I think part of me hoped that perhaps this opportunity to be with her at the end of her life might enable us to heal our relationship the rest of the way. I actually could maybe have the kind of relationship with her I had always secretly longed for. And also that I wanted to show up as a daughter in a particular way, even though she had betrayed me repeatedly as a mother. She'd also done good things as a mother. And so part of me was dreading her coming and felt like it was going to completely upset my entire life, and that I'd fail at being her caregiver. And part of me was longing to see if in this circumstance, if I showed up for her, that maybe something could change or heal between us in the final years of her life. So she moved and out to my town in Santa Cruz, California, and lived here for the remainder of her life, which was about 6.5 years. And this book really tells the story from that phone call to the end of her life, with a lot of looking back at the early stages of the relationship and why it was so volatile. and dramatic. So the question I was asking was, can you caretake a parent who betrayed you in the past? That was as in real life, that was the question I was facing. And my character in the memoir, who was not me, but based on me, was facing that question too. And I wanted to present the two of us as completely human and completely flawed. I didn't want to be the hero and have my mother be the villain, which is probably why it took me 10 years to write the book, because it took that long to be able to present, first of all, to show my own underbelly and my own flaws, and also to create her as a completely three-dimensional, dramatic, compelling character. And I think I succeeded in that. And that's when I decided it was time to publish the book. So that's what I dealt with. And I wanted, as a caregiver, to tell the real truth, not the sugar-coated truth, but really how hard and difficult, rewarding, how complicated it was. This very complex relationship, which ironically, 8 years after her death, I feel like I'm still in relationship with her. I mean, she's not here anymore, and in some ways, the fact that I don't have to deal with her more challenging characteristics in person makes it easier for me to process the relationship. But I feel, in some ways, very loving and open towards her at this point, and it's continued to be an active relationship. So that's what I wanted to write about, was this mother-daughter dynamic, and also what the caregiving process really is like, and that it's possible to find resolution even if it's imperfect. It's not like the fancy Hollywood ending where the violins are playing and everything is resolved, but that it was enough. And that's that's the story I wanted to tell.
I would think that your story would be incredibly helpful to a lot of people. Have you gotten that kind of feedback on your book?
Yes. I mean, it's interesting. I've heard both from people who are in my position, the position of being the daughter, but I've also heard from a lot of older people who are in the position of approaching needing a caregiver or being in relationship with their daughters. It's usually the daughter, not the son, unfortunately. But so I've heard from people on both sides of that equation who have deeply resonated with this story. And it's really struck a very strong emotional chord for them. And for caregivers, I think made them really reflect on a lot of their experience that they maybe didn't have time to process when they were going through it, because it's so demanding to be a caregiver. Particularly, I was in the sandwich generation. I had, when my mother was declining and I was taking care of her, I had 2 teenagers at home. So I was just, totally squeezed. I felt like I was in a vice during those years.
When you heard from the mothers on the side of the equation, what did you hear from them?
I heard about what it was like to surrender control. I heard about the challenges of giving up independence. I heard about letting go of the person they had been before, and what it was like to become more dependent on someone after having been independent for many, many decades. And I heard a lot about their daughters, just like from the daughters, I heard a lot about their mothers. And a lot of them maybe would reflect because maybe earlier in their life they'd been in that role. So, I mean, this is generational, right? So no matter what age people were, they were often reflecting on their mothers, whether they were, 90 years old, 60 years old, or 30 years old.
Fascinating. So, Laura, one of the things I noticed recently on something you put out on the internet was you had a prompt to write about libraries.
Oh, yeah.
What does a library mean to you?
I think it's so interesting because I just, right before this recording, I taught my weekly writing class, and I had my students writing about libraries. I had them tell me about something that happened in the library. And then we all made lists of books that had changed our lives. Not just books they liked, but books that really changed their lives in some significant way. And then everybody wrote a story about one of those books. So I think for me, libraries were, well, first of all, I fell in love with words in the library. I don't know that I'd be a writer if it wasn't for libraries and the huge handfuls of books I used to bring home as a little child. I grew up in a very literate household. I was read to every night, and there was the books were everywhere. So, and the library was like a very magical place to get information. And I remember looking at those old card catalogs.
Oh, I
Where you
love
pull
card
out the
catalogs.
drawer, and there's those little cards with a Dewey Decimal System. And there were times I was able to get information and find out about things that I couldn't find out about any other way. So it really was a doorway, a portal into all kinds of knowledge, including forbidden knowledge. And I mean, just this morning I was listening to a podcast about all these challenges to books in the libraries and all these groups of parents, mothers who were organizing all over the country to fight books in school libraries. I mean, it's just it's so cyclical, but it's so sad and devastating to know that these people are gaining control. They're getting on the school boards, and they're limiting what kids can have access to, and seeing books as dangerous. It's like, if you don't want to read that book, don't pick it up. But
Right.
for someone else, it might be the exact right book at the right moment.
Yeah, I find that whole thing very distressing to me. I try to understand things, but that I have trouble understanding. I agree with you. If you don't like the book, don't pick it up. If you don't like what I'm doing, don't watch. I just don't understand. I just don't understand. Oh, Laura, you've done so much. What in your life are the 3 things you're proudest of?
Um, I think the first would be that I was an incest survivor. I was sexually abused by my grandfather, and that so as a result, I was a very traumatized teenager and young adult, and really very dysfunctional, and that I was able to heal from that. That I set myself on a healing course. I got tons of help, and that I was able to heal from that devastation. And also that led to writing my first book, The Courage to Heal, which has helped, probably millions of women and some men for more than 3 decades heal from sexual abuse. So the fact that I was able to take something that was traumatic for me and turn it into a resource for others, that continues to be a living resource today. I feel really proud of that. I feel really proud that I reconciled with my mother. I mean, I think both of us felt that our relationship was impossible. We had every reason to give up on each other and to feel betrayed by each other. And yet both of us really persisted in wanting to connect with each other. And I feel really proud of that. And also that I took care of her at the end of her life. And it was very difficult for me. But that I, on a human level, I showed up for another person to that extent, I think makes me feel proud. I think the other thing is that my partner, Karen, and I have 3 kids who are 25, 29, and 44. And they're all thriving adults, so they're in healthy relationships. They feel good about their lives. They all do work they like. And so I feel really proud of that. I feel like this next generation, I was able to provide for them a kind of stable core for themselves that I didn't get as a child. So I think it's really improving things for the next generation. I feel really good about that.
What could be a better thing to do than that? I mean,
No,
really, I mean,
yeah.
seriously, I mean, we haven't left the best world for people. So to provide a sturdy background, I think is important. Your life has been sort of a journey of healing.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I I remember when I wrote The Courage to Heal with Ellen Bass, which was like 35 years ago, there was this one woman I interviewed that I'll never forget her. She said that she was, always going to these workshops to improve herself and to fix herself. And she said she went down to Mexico on a vacation for like 3 or 4 months. And she said when she came back, her mailbox was full of flyers for all these self-improvement programs and seminars and groups. And she said, I took it all and I threw it in the trash. And I just thought, you know what? I don't need to fix myself anymore. I'm good enough the way I am. So I took that to heart. And it's not, I mean, I'm someone who is really committed to growth. I think I will be committed to growth and self-reflection and like whatever it is, like in my life, I've had to learn to apologize, which was so hard for me to ever admit I was wrong. I'm always trying to grow in a lot of different fronts, but I do feel like I am enough. What I've done is enough. I have a little sticker on right by my computer. It says, I am enough. I have enough. I do enough. And for me, I need to look at that every single day because, however I'm wired with like the doing gene. I got that from my mother. And I have to remember I have enough, I do enough, I am enough.
Two things, and I don't know which I want to talk about. One of them is that's fascinating. I have had a personal project since the mid-90s called The Sign of Enough.
Oh, tell me more about that.
And the question that it was designed to answer was, how will I know when I have enough? I lived in San Francisco in the mid-90s during that dot-com boom and watched guys in their mostly guys in their early 20s become overnight millionaires and get every possible toy and trinket and big house. And then when they got bored, they would turn around to want to start another company. And I remember where I was sitting in the marina in San Francisco in a coffee shop, reading the paper, saying probably out loud, oh my gosh, you guys, how will you know when you have enough? And I just stopped and thought, well, how will any of us know when we have enough? So I've worked with that now for 20 some years. And it did occur to me sometime along the way that is an important question. It remains an important question given what we're doing to the environment and to our souls and everything else. But the question actually is a spiritual question about how will I know when I am enough? Because when I know I am enough, I will have enough. And until then, I don't know if I ever will, because I will be trying to fill something up that's empty.
So have you gotten there yet?
Some of the time. I don't know that it's a specific destination we reach and then say, phew, well, that's done.
Right.
Well,
I want to know now, I want your advice. What's helped you get there to however far you've gotten in those 20 years?
I think a little bit about what you were just saying. I think at some point I realized that I had gone to and so many of us did this, every self-help project, program, book, video that there was. And at some point, this is arrogant. I got to one of them and thought, I could teach this. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just not doing this anymore. And I love the distinction you just made about continuing to grow without trying to fix yourself. Those are two very different things.
Yeah, it is two very different things.
Because I have no intention or desire to stop growing until I die. And when I die, maybe I'll stop and maybe I won't. I don't know.
Send us back a message and let us know. You go first.
I'll let you know from the other side. So what questions are you living with, Laura?
I'm living with will I get dementia like my mother? I feel like that question is, I don't obsess on it. I don't wake up worrying about it. And I'm very aware it's a possibility, so that's one question. Another question is, I think it's, will I be okay when I'm old? And I think it's, will I be financially okay when I'm old? As a self-employed entrepreneurial person, I don't have a pension. I don't have, the choices I made, I'm having to deal with now when I look ahead. So I think that's a question I'm living with. And how can I best secure my independence as I get older? Yeah, and I think, how do I want to transform my current work so I can work less and work smarter
And be outside with your dog.
and be outside with my dog? And right now I'm training. I lead retreats in different parts of the world, and next September I'm taking a group of writers hiking on the Camino de Santiago. So I just last week met with a trainer whose specialty is preparing people, I think a lot of people my age, for these multi-day hikes or adventures where you really have to train. So I'm in training for that. So I have stretching I have to do and strength exercises and a certain amount of miles a week. And that's what I want to be doing. That's what I want to be doing. Yeah, it's how can I give up the habitual patterns that I just keep repeating and really discover, am I capable of discovering a different way to live that is more about being and less about doing? And I know that's it's such a complete cliche, but the reality is I've just been driven to do my whole life. And I don't want to I've done enough. I really do believe I've done enough, and I have to keep producing things or doing things. And I actually like working, but I just don't want it to drive me the way it has in the past. And the question is, can I free myself and discover a new way to be?
And for me, when you say that, I would have to add, can I discover it and will I do it?
Yeah.
Because I don't always trust myself to do what I've discovered is a better way. It's sometimes scary to think of stopping doing things the way, or I don't know. I don't always take the steps that would be best in my best interest, I think, even if I see it. And I really would like to change that. Well,
I just want to say one other question, because those were all questions about me. I think the other question I have is, will our democracy survive in the United States? And what world is being left to my grandchildren?
Yes.
I think that's a huge, I feel like that's a giant preoccupation for me, of something I really can't do much about. But it's a question that I live with that's some way completely supersedes my own concerns about myself.
Right. I agree. And I think that's a very big question, and for which we have no answers right now, but we can just keep working. Now, I know that in addition to going to taking your long walk, you're also planning a retreat for women in May.
Yes, last year, this was a trip that I was planning before the pandemic. It got canceled in 2020. And last spring, I was able to take a group of, I think there were 16 of us, to a beautiful, gorgeous villa in Tuscany. And the trip combined writing, being in this incredible estate, learning about wines and olive oil production, going on outings. We had a yoga teacher doing morning yoga for those who wanted it. And so it was a combination of relaxation, incredibly decadent, rich, and wonderful Italian food, eating outdoors under the moonlight. And then a couple of hours a day of daily writing for those who want to. And people came who considered themselves writers or didn't, but they were open to using writing as a tool to help bond us as a group and for self-exploration. So that trip was so fantastic. I'm doing it again in the middle of May this coming year. And there's still space on the trip. I would love to have anyone listening check it out. You could learn about it at lauradavis.net/Tuscany. That's lauradavis.net/Tuscany. Tuscany. I think it's going to be really an incredible trip once again.
It sounds luscious. It just sounds.
Yeah, luscious is a really good word for it.
Whoa. So I know, I have a sense of some of the things you're thinking about how you hope the next years turn out. But do you have dreams that you haven't realized yet?
Well, I have wanted to hike the Camino de Santiago. So that is a dream I hope I will be able to fulfill next September. If I don't get injured or something, something doesn't happen, there's not a new pandemic that closes the border. So that's something I've wanted to do something that physically challenging. I can't really think of anything else, actually. I've really done a lot in my life. So I don't, if I knew what the dream was that I hadn't yet fulfilled, I'd probably be working towards it.
Right.
Because that's just the way I am. But I feel like I have like that fallow place of not knowing, and I have to just become comfortable not knowing and allowing myself to live in uncertainty, knowing that there's a deep underground change going on and not knowing how or when it will manifest.
And that you're doing certainly one and probably those two things next year that may be helpful in figuring all that out. I would think the long walk would be a wonderful, wonderful time.
I hope that's true. I mean, because I'm leading the trip, it's different. When you're the leader, you're not just having the experience, you're facilitating. So I'll be walking, but I'm also going to be taking care of everyone, one of the people. So I can't really use it. It's not really a spiritual journey for me. I'm facilitating that for others. So I hope that I have some of those experiences.
I hope
but
you do too.
Having led a lot of trips, I know the responsibility of making sure people are safe and comfortable and that the group dynamics are going well and all the logistics and all the little emergencies that happen. That's what I'll be dealing with.
Along with taking care of yourself.
Yes, and taking care of myself. Yeah, and training now so that I'm not going to be injured while I'm doing it.
Yeah, good. So is there anything else you're doing now that you would like to talk about?
Just, if anyone listening today wants to write as a tool for either healing or self-exploration, or because they want to leave a legacy of family stories, I do teach weekly writing classes that meet online, so people could come from anywhere in the world, really. And I will be taking, I take new students on a cyclical basis. So if anyone wants that or wants to work on their craft as a writer, either for self-expression or because they're working on a project, they should check me out at lauradavis.net.
Wonderful. Well, that's our time today. Thank you so much, everybody, for being with us. You can find out more about Prime Spark Podcast on every popular outlet. You can find out more about Prime Spark at www.primesparkwomen.com. Thank you so much to my guest, Laura Davis. That was such fun. And don't forget, you can find her at lauradavis.net. So thank you, Laura. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with us. Take care. Spread tolerance and love. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to stay updated, you can head over to my website, primesparkwomen.com, and get my free Spark Guide, 7 questions to ignite your spark, to help you discover your own spark. See you in the next episode.